Hello and welcome to another Showdown Breakdown show. My name is Adam Levitan, as always, joined by Cody Main and by Gary Hartman here for Derek Carr versus Patrick Mahomes. Cody, good morning.
Morning, Adam. Ready to break this one down. Hopefully more offensive fireworks than we saw last night.
Gary, good morning.
Yeah, and certainly more than Thursday night. I'm excited for this game. I think it should be a fun one.
Yes, we have a big sample on these Raiders-Chiefs game. Cody, obviously they play twice every year. A lot of the coaching has been similar. Obviously, we get Josh McDaniels in this year, but still, we have a ton of data on this matchup. We have a ton of data on these teams. We have seen the Chiefs in Showdown. I feel like the Chiefs have been in Showdown more than any other team, although that's just anecdotal. I have no idea. It just always feels that way. Cody, what do you think about this matchup as a whole? We have 5-1 roster construction projecting, I think, higher than we normally see it. A lot of Chiefs onslaughts out there. What do you think about macro stuff on this game? Cody, can you hear me?
I gotcha. Sorry. I think your point on just having a massive sample on Chiefs specifically and Raiders to a lesser degree. I've logged 16 primetime matchups since 2020 with just Travis Kelce in them. So we kind of understand where the field is going to go in these Chiefs slates. As much as we've seen the offense change with Tyreek Hill out of town, it's pretty much stayed the same in terms of the field's utilization of the players and of the team as a whole. So I do think we'll see 5-1. One thing that's worth noting is we're starting to see like the field manually up their ownership of these 5-1, 2-4, 1-5, kind of the non-traditional lineup settings with 3-3 and 4-2 coming in lower owned than they've been projected recently. And it's just because I think it's one of those easy things that you can manipulate both during hand building and in optimizer. So I wouldn't be shocked to see 5-1 come up even a little bit more. It's 11.1% projected now. Chiefs are pretty easy to onslaught, especially with some of those cheap guys that we'll talk about here as we go through the show. Noah Gray, Jody Fortson, guys like that are easy to include in those onslaughts. One other thing from a macro perspective, both passing attacks are going to be heavily utilized. Just as a general rule in these high total games, the running backs tend to get pushed down a little bit as the field expects these shootouts and they expect it to come from the aerial attacks most often. So you'll see maybe lower than projected ownership on both backfields as a whole.
From an injury perspective, just get a couple things out of the way. Jason says update on Juju's health for tonight. Juju is going to play. It seemed like based on Saturday's practice, there was never really any concern that Juju was going to play. They did list him questionable, but again, he would have been one of those guys that I would have said, hey, he's questionable but probable. If there was still probable tag, I think Juju would have been played. Other injury note: Hunter Renfrow is back, baby. Missed 2 games with a concussion. Hunter Renfrow is indeed back. From a quarterback position perspective, Patrick Mahomes had that really awesome week 1 game, was a little bit of a lull there in week 2 and 3. He was awesome in week 4 again, was Patrick Mahomes. Kind of the weird thing about this stuff, Gary, is that even though I think Patrick Mahomes has played really, really well, I still can't really get very comfortable with his wide receivers, at least on a full slate perspective, right? And we'll talk about some of those in a second, but it makes some stacking stuff interesting. Gary, what do you think about using Mahomes tonight? We have 72% total and 18% captain ownership projected.
Yeah, Mahomes has been good, as you mentioned, but we haven't seen any of those real world beater games yet in 2022 with kind of this revamped receiving core. But I really like the spot here tonight. And maybe as we go through the show here, I might have a little bit of a Chiefs bias. I think they cover the spread. I think they score a ton at home in division tonight. So I think he puts the pedal on the metal. I think he's a cash game lock, obviously. And then I have no problem using him a lot in tournaments. My only thing is with the 18% captain ownership, I think I'd probably prefer him in flex and, pairing him or doing more Kelce in captain, things like that. But Mahomes will make most of my lineups tonight. You're muted.
To be clear, this Raiders defense is much better against the run than it is against the pass. And I think we'll see another very, very, very pass heavy approach here. On the other side, I think Derek Carr has actually not played very well this year. I wouldn't consider this kind of a get right spot for him, but that Derek Carr just might not be that good, period. I think he's somewhere around average in this spot. However, you tend to get pushed into more throw heavy stuff. And I think Josh McDaniels, I think, has seen that Derek Carr is just average, and he's gone some way more run-heavy attacks. And we've seen a lot of Josh Jacobs usage, which we'll get to lately. Cody, any thoughts on Mahomes, and then we can get into the Carr stuff?
Yeah, I like Mahomes a lot. The one interesting thing about it being so difficult to stack Mahomes is it kind of makes it nice for Showdown. You know, I know you talk about Kirk Cousins doubles on main slate because it's just so easy. You know where the production's going to go most likely. The fact that outside of Travis Kelce, we really don't know where Mahomes' production is going to go kind of makes those doubles a little bit easier to stomach because you're going to play into a lot less ownership, especially, with Juju now potentially a little bit banged up. I know we assume that he's fine, but it could open the door a little bit for even more for some of these receivers further down the board. So I don't totally hate the captain Mahomes doubles, even at 18% projected captain ownership. And then going back to the Carr stuff with the Raiders, you can tell that his performance has been down because every single one of his receivers is on the By Leone model right now. So it makes for an interesting discussion where the offense is kind of underperformed from a passing standpoint. But whether it be they get more efficient tonight, or just the fact that they're forced into it. The Chiefs defense has been really strong against the run as well. They've been equally good, not quite as good against the pass, but they've been good against the pass as well. I just think that they force teams into so many throw heavy attacks that you can include Derek Carr in cash. Don't mind Derek Carr as a GPP flex option when paired with his wide receiver and captain, but I don't think I can get myself to Derek Carr captain tonight.
So just to be clear for people, Mahomes captain, you would have 2 pass catchers at least, right? Would you have 3? But could you have 3 pass catchers with Mahomes captain?
Yeah, Chiefs are unique because we did see it with Noah Gray. We saw it with Jody Fortson. Like, it seemed like all those guys got in the end zone in the same game. That certainly won't happen again, but you can include those guys as your third. I would include Sky Moore kind of in that group, and I would set a max 1 rule for that. So like Sky Moore, Noah Gray, Jody Fortson, guys that we'll talk about in a second here, I would max 1 that group, and then kind of let it run with, the Kelce, Juju, MVS, McColl. Those guys can be the part of the 2, but I don't mind where those guys are really cheap, including them in Mahomes triples.
Okay. Let's go to the running back position. I mean, this Josh Jacobs stuff, I mean, his role has been awesome. And they're still using Brandon Bolden on like very, very clear pass downs. But Josh Jacobs' passing role has been awesome. And they've turned into like kind of a runnish heavy team, basically because I think Josh Jacobs has been playing so well, certainly better than Derek Carr has been playing. Now, in this spot against the Chiefs, we have to score a ton. You would assume you have to throw a ton. There's a lot of game scripts that flow out where they aren't able to get Josh Jacobs 20 carries. We have 44% Gary on Josh Jacobs, 8% captain. What do you think about him? And any thoughts on Bolden? I think Bolden is a little bit expensive at 2K, and maybe Cody can talk about so bad it's good. The favorite bit of the Showdown. Just find whoever the worst play is and play him.
Yeah. I think Bolden might be a little bit thin, but yeah, I mean, honestly, if you're going 4-2, 5-1 Chiefs onslaught, like you could probably make an argument for Bolden as one of those Raiders. So I think that's okay. Jacobs, yeah, I mean, I'm still tilting on the whole season long Josh Jacobs stuff, best ball Josh Jacobs stuff that I didn't invest in at all, even in the 7th and 8th round, because I'm a donkey, I guess. But yeah, I mean, tonight, and I think Cody made a good point in the article, has him as a captain Jacobs spot as a leverage play. And even if you want to play into game script here, I mean, he has 11 targets over the last 2 weeks. So caught 5 balls in each of the last 2 games. Like, as you mentioned, the role's been elite. He's over 5 yards a carry in 3 of his 4 games. Like, this is the best job we've ever seen Josh Jacobs. Yeah. I think he's always been a okay to good running back, but he's playing more like a good to great running back this year. And I think either way, game script, he hasn't really been game script dependent. So like, I'm not going to fade it altogether. I think he's an okay play.
Cody, if you wanted to take the script, I think the Raiders are going to win the game. Who would you have at captain in that? Or who would be some choices? Would Jacobs be in there as like the primary? Hey, Raiders are going to win the game. Here's who I want my captains to be.
Yeah, absolutely. I think 2-4 style builds that you expect the Raiders to not only cover but win. Then Jacobs is going to remain heavily involved. I think he'll stay in there, like you mentioned with Bolden getting the very obvious pass down stuff. I could see I could even see Jacobs staying in for 2-minute drives. I think it would only go to Bolden and like you mentioned, the very very obvious pass down stuff at this point. Just how good Jacobs has played. McDaniels can't afford to take him off the field. I think you can consider some of the pass catchers there in captain in those Raiders win style lineup constructions, but I love Jacobs as kind of a leverage play. We have 8.4% projected, and you see it kind of pretty flat for a lot of these skill position players in that price range. I think that his could end up getting squeezed as people project more of this pass happy approach tonight.
On the other side, Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been very efficient with his touches, especially in the red zone. And they've schemed stuff to him too. I mean, I don't want to downplay Clyde Edwards-Helaire's touchdown rate too much because around the red zone, they have clearly schemed him stuff in both the pass game and the run game. However, I mean, you would be blind to say that Isaiah Pacheco has not run better than Clyde Edwards-Helaire as just a pure runner. Now, does that mean anything? Does that mean Isaiah Pacheco is going to play more tonight? I actually don't know. I think that they've been winning. Clyde Edwards-Helaire has been productive, although Isaiah Pacheco has been better. I kind of think that the split stays the same, and that's how we have it projected 14.5 compared to 4.3. But there's so many Pacheco slappies out there. I mean, people love Pacheco. They love clicking Pacheco. 4,800 would be too much for me. Then again, his ownership, of course, is projected only at 9.2% total ownership. So what do you think here, Cody, about the Pacheco versus CEH stuff? And I'd throw McKinnon into the mix too, who it wasn't that long ago. McKinnon led the backfield in snaps 2 weeks ago. So go ahead.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Pacheco being 4,800, right? Like Bolden could get there. We saw it with Samaje Perine last night. Was just peppered on 1 2-minute drive and like almost was enough to force his way into some winning lineups. At 4,800, like you actually have to do something at that price tag. Could he fall in the end zone and get there? Sure. Saw 31% of the team's rushing attempts last week. That mostly came at the expense of McKinnon. It was, Edwards-Helaire still led the team with 53%, ran around on more dropbacks last week, though his target share was down. We've just seen this absurd target share, targets per route run through the first 3 weeks. So that was kind of expected for CEH. I like CEH quite a bit. I would be implementing like a negative correlation rule in optimizers for both Pacheco and McKinnon. I think in CEH's true ceiling games, it's obviously going to come at the expense of both of those guys. And I really don't know what to do with, McKinnon at this point. His rushing attempts were way down. Routes were down last week. I don't know if that was just a product of the game environment they were playing in, or if, the coaching staff had finally seen enough from Pacheco to trust him a little bit more in those spots. So I like CEH from kind of a baseline perspective and really have minimal interest in those other two.
Yeah, it's hard. One thing about this slate, Gary, is that like the Chiefs spread it around so much. They're a committee at running back. They're a big committee at wide receiver. We see like dust balls like Noah Gray and Jody Fortson get plays called for them. It's hard for people trying to make, 1, 2, 3 lineups to kind of narrow it down. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know what you think just from generally on the Chiefs stuff with all this committee stuff.
I was thinking the same thing. Like usually I don't love full on MMEing Showdown. I just think that your EV is really low in those scenarios, but this kind of game particularly, but Chiefs in general are the type of team that I would be more comfortable doing it in because you have way higher of a chance of hitting the combinations that you'll need to hit. Like, as you mentioned, those condensed target or route tree type teams, the Bengals, the Vikings, things like that. It's way easier to, hand build your 8 to 10 lineups, feel good about hitting your combinations. Here, it's not that way. Just to touch on the running back stuff. I mean, I think we're actually at a point where this just isn't solidified yet. And like, I think everything's going to continue to be game script dependent, hot hand kind of Andy Reid gut feeling type of thing as far as what we're getting out of Pacheco and McKinnon, while CEH will continue to get his 50+% work, but the efficiency I don't think is going to last for him. So, I think I would spread around all three of these guys. I don't mind going to Pacheco at 4,800 because it is going to keep his ownership down, but I don't feel comfortable I don't feel overly comfortable with any of these three guys. I prefer to attack the passing game.
All right. Speaking of the passing game, I'm going to include Travis Kelce in here as well as we talk about wide receiver and tight end, because obviously Waller and Kelce have very big roles. I think Davante Adams, I was certainly worried that the downgrade in quarterback, the increased target competition wouldn't be great for Davante Adams. And we've seen some slow games, but I do think that he's played well and his opportunity has been really, really good. We have a big projection on Davante Adams here as we lead into kind of a pass heavy likeliest game script for the Raiders. Hunter Renfrow is back though, and I think that hurts Matt Collins. I mean, Hunter Renfrow is capable of drawing a 20-25% target share at any time, and Keelan Cole was not. Obviously, Keelan Cole was subbing in for Hunter Renfrow, and so it's even more crowded here than it was the last couple weeks. Cody, any thoughts on Davante Adams? We have big captain ownership projection on Davante Adams up at 13% more than Travis Kelce, which actually surprised me a little bit, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, on the Raiders stuff, it was, I mentioned that all those guys are on the Bialeoni model. We've seen kind of the passing attack underperform through the first 4 weeks. And I wouldn't necessarily call this a get right spot from an efficiency standpoint, but I think it's going to be a get right spot just from the fact that they're going to be forced into this pass happy game script. It's what the Chiefs do to opposing offenses. So I think we could see, start to see some bigger box score performances from these guys like Adams, Waller, Renfro, and we're going to start to see that at these price tags that it's going to be difficult to fit multiple of them into an individual lineup. So with Adams being 11-4 and having that big projection, what DraftKings has done through the first couple of weeks is just price Travis Kelce to a point that kind of reflects Tyreek Hill being out of town. And we've seen ownership remain muted in that respect. So I think that the base projection on Adams will force ownership up a little bit more than we see on Travis Kelce, though I could see them coming in pretty close. The one interesting thing to keep an eye on is I could see the ownership gap between Renfro and Matt Collins really separating. Renfro is kind of a guy that's easy to fit into these builds. The base projection is really strong. He's only $800 more expensive than Holland. So I could see Renfro's ownership creeping up 35-40%, particularly in some of the smaller field single entry contests. And then Matt Collins coming in, even lower than the 20% that we have projected right now.
The Matt Collins stuff is interesting. Matt Collins is going to be out there. He's going to be out there a ton. He never profiled as a big target earner. Certainly that got a boost when Hunter Renfro was out, but now Matt Collins is priced, I think, at a spot where no one's going to play him. That is or very few people are going to play him. I think if anything, we're high on that at 13, at 13% on Matt Collins. Then we have all this other stuff going on, like Cody mentioned, Mecole Hardman, Sky Moore, Juju. It's a mess, Gary. How are you thinking about mixing through some of these guys?
Yeah, I'm wondering if this is finally our MVS game, although I don't like MVS as a player in general. But, you can make a quick argument for it here if Juju re-aggravates the injury or if he's limited at all. Also, he's one of those guys that for large field tournaments, like, pairing him with Mahomes always makes sense because it could be just a bomb or even two bombs and you get it done on 2 catches for what you need out of MVS, and just kind of a hunch play that maybe this is his night. Not interested in going to Mecole Hardman as his role diminishes here. But I am interested in Sky Moore, I think. Read Cody's article for the exact numbers or Silva's, I don't know. But he had a season high in routes run, target share, all that stuff last week. And I would continue to expect to see that increase as we go on here. We always knew this was a chance with Sky Moore, that it would be kind of more mid to late season play for him. So I don't know if we're there yet where he's going to be a big part of this game plan, but I'd rather be a week early on it. So I think I like him at 2,400 with as a nice pairing with Mahomes.
Waller sticks out as really cheap, I think, relative to talent level, but his role has not been great at all this year. We have 24% total ownership and 4% captain on him. I don't see it on Waller right now, but that's kind of the field doesn't see it either. And he at least has the talent. So that one kind of sticks out to me as somewhat interesting. Anything else here on wide receiver, tight end before we move on here, Cody?
Yeah, I had the same take as you did on Waller, just pulling up the slate for the first time and looking at prices before I really dove into things. And that one stood out. I mean, we had been playing Waller on showdowns in years past at 10,000 plus, kind of in that Travis Kelce range. Obviously, different situation this year with Adams in town, but we can still see those big Darren Waller games, and seeing 3%, 4% captain ownership is really interesting on a guy like Waller.
Sorry, go ahead, Gary.
No, I was just saying he's a direct pivot to Adams too. Is going to be massive chalk, right? Like
right.
Ceiling games, can you play them together? Sure, but I don't think it's efficient at all. Like they're going to eat directly into each other's ultimate ceiling cases. So especially for wanting to use one in captain, I think Waller's a really strong tournament play.
In terms of the actual like stone cold punts down here, Cody, does anyone stick out to you in like the absolute below 1K range? Obviously, we know Gray and Fortson have some touchdown equity. It doesn't look like there's much else.
It's Gray and Fortson. You can throw Watson into that mix at 1K, though. Like we just talked about with Sky Moore, like his opportunities or Sky Moore's opportunities are going to come at the expense of Justin Watson and Mecole Hardman. So I would kind of set a max 1 rule of that group. I think they should be in your MME run, and we're going to see like Noah Gray's ownership be it's 8.6% projected. Like that's just the easy thing to fit in all these studs. So we saw it with Rashad White. We've seen it with some of these other guys that are $200, $400, $600. You could see that come up to 10, 15%. Depending on the contest you're playing in.
Yeah. I mean, Justin chimes in here on the Sky Moore play. Sky, snaps have gone up every week. Juju is banged up, most talented wide receiver. I can see all that. He also had like a ton of wide receiver needy teams pass on him in the draft and has been unable to earn snaps very much at all this year. I agree they're going up. I hope they're going up. I have a bunch of Sky Moore best ball and dynasty stuff. I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. It's certainly rising. on Sky Moore. There's no doubt about that. All right. I don't think many people are going to play Raiders defense at all here. We have 9%, 0.9 captain. I do think that people are going to play Chiefs defense and maybe at a higher rate than we have it here. There are a lot of defense showdown slappies out there. Cody, what do you think about using kicker and defense on this slate?
Yeah, in these high total games, we do tend to see DST ownership come down quite a bit. We saw it last night with everyone wanting to play, kind of play the stars. And once you get those guys in there, you're kind of projecting this offensive explosion, and it doesn't feel so comfortable to play the DSTs alongside it. If we do stick with 17.3% total ownership on the Chiefs D, and there's not a whole lot of skill position options in that range tonight, so it might come up a little bit. But if it stays in kind of that sub 20% range, I think it's fantastic. I don't know if it was an official Thorne DL O-line mismatch, but I did see that he's got the Chiefs rated as the 12th best defensive line and the Raiders as the 28th worst offensive line. So I like that matchup there. We expect a more pass happy approach. Doesn't bother us if the Raiders are scoring points. We just want them to be dropping back and hopefully get a couple of those Derek Carr mistakes.
I like the Chiefs. I like Chiefs defense. We have a kicker injury. Our boy Bucker is going to miss this game. Can't say I know too much about Matthew Wright. You're a Chiefs bro. Cody, do you think they'll give Matthew Wright the same opportunities that they would have given Harrison Butker?
Yeah, I think we saw it might have been the last showdown slate Matthew Wright played, and then I think one before that it was Matt Amendola before he got cut. Yeah. And there's something to like this name value. I've talked about it on a couple of shows now. There's like something to this name value aspect of kickers. People love Greg Zuerlein and Robbie Gould and Evan McPherson and Justin Tucker. Of course, we saw those guys push 30% own last night. People don't know Matthew Wright, and people might have the same concerns that you do. I think it was the slate a week ago where Matthew Wright came in at like 10.8% owned. And, I don't think that'll hold now that he's been on the team for a little while and that we've seen him kick. But it certainly could get lower captain ownership or lower flex ownership on Matthew Wright tonight than you would for Harrison Butker. And I mean, we've got a 4-week sample and a 5-week sample now almost of kickers just breaking every showdown slate. So why not?
Why not? More kickers.
I think Carlson's a good play. Especially if you're going into the Raiders keep it close narrative. Like if you like them to cover, Carlson makes a ton of sense here. Also for almost mid-October game in Kansas City, this is looking like 70-degree weather with like no wind. So, I mean, I think scoring could happen either way, but I think it's a good kicker spot here tonight.
Yeah, I definitely. If you're playing Las Vegas plays well and has a chance to win the game, I think Carlson, Jacobs are interesting. Adams is going to be good in either game script, I think. Okay, we have about 5 minutes for questions here. You guys get in. We'll get to as many as we can. Let's see what we got here. Charlie is trying to guess flag plants. He says he sees it in your eyes, Cody, that you were going to flag plant Darren Waller. We'll see. Stay tuned. Waller with the Chiefs in super sacks, fading Adams as the ultimate weirdness. Yeah. What do you think about using fading? What kind of lineups, I guess, Cody, would you want to fade Devontae Adams in? I don't really have a ton of interest in fading Devontae Adams, but if you did, what kind of lineups would you want to not have Devontae Adams in?
Yeah, I mean, at that price tag, he's going to have to score for sure, right? I don't think he can get there. I mean, I guess we could say the same thing about Cooper Kupp, though I don't think Devontae Adams has that Cooper Kupp-esque role. You're assuming Devontae Adams is for sure going to score in lineups that you roster him at the price tag in order to get there. So maybe in lineups where the Raiders are extremely inefficient, and although he racks up a little bit of receiving volume, still doesn't find pay dirt. In those type of lineups, you could see the cheaper options like Waller, like Renfro, like maybe Matt Collins end up getting into lineups where they're cheaper. Yeah,
you fade them in close games that go under. That's the only times you fade Adams here. I think because you really if you think the Raiders win flat out, Adams has something to do with that. And I think I love Adams the most in the super Chief stacks because I think that's when he's raking up a ton of volume. But yeah, that's my thought.
Matt says, with Juju banged up, is he too risky for cash after seeing what happened with T. Higgins last night? So I get it. Normally when guys are Q/P, like I thought T. Higgins was, it's usually fine. Like it's usually fine a lot of the time. When guys are truly Q, like, the Amon-Ra stuff, you saw him get limit, that's different. I think my sense is that Juju is Q/P, but yeah, I mean, I don't have a great feeling on Juju Smith-Schuster anyways here. I haven't tried to make a cash lineup yet, but like I have no problem whatsoever fading Juju in cash. I don't think he like sticks out massively. I guess he's a little bit underpriced here, Cody, at 6,600, but I don't think he's like massively underpriced.
Yeah, agreed. And we feel fine about the injury coming in, but it's a hamstring. It's a soft tissue thing that flared up on Saturday. I don't feel totally confident in it. And I haven't built a cash team yet, but like you have direct pivots right below that project fairly well, a little bit cheaper. You obviously want both quarterbacks in your cash lineup. I think both kickers are pretty strong on this slate. So I don't know if you necessarily need Juju tonight.
Yeah, overweight Mahomes at captain. I think Gary already said he didn't love that one, but I think that it's at least in play in some of these lineups where you think if you play Mahomes captain, you need to throw like 3 to 4 touchdowns to 3 or 4 different guys, right? Because if one guy catches 2 of the touchdowns or one guy catches 3 touchdowns, obviously he's the optimal captain. So you're threading a needle a little bit with Mahomes captain, but they spread around enough that maybe he can throw 4 touchdowns to 4 different guys, right? And then Mahomes is for sure, or he can run one in also, and then maybe he is the optimal captain. So it's an interesting conversation. It's just at 18% projected captain ownership, it's thin, right? It's a tough conversation. Gary, any more thoughts on that?
Yeah, no, I think if I were to fade the number of the 18% of captain, it wouldn't be like by a ton. Like I think I'd still come in somewhere between 12 and 15%. I think I'd just rather take the shots on both Kelsey as captain, who as Cody mentioned, because of his price, and Adams getting so much juice, might come in a little bit under owned. And then, also I think I would take like a sprinkle of Juju, like 1 or 2%, and like a sprinkle of MVS as a captain, and just hope that, hey, there's 2 touchdowns going in one direction to these guys. And then that would make up the rest of that number of the 18% for me. Mm-hmm. But as you mentioned, it's just kind of a hard guessing game. If you're MMEing and you want to match the field to go over, I think that's totally fair.
I've been having trouble with this one, Cody. Your favorite contrarian scripts or builds. Like, I actually don't think that the Raiders are going to win the game. I actually like a contrarian build that I like to do sometimes, like last night, like if you listen to the betting show on Friday, Davidow was like adamant that under on Bengals Ravens was like the right side. And so like, I like playing some of these showdown where the contrarian is just, hey, it's going to be way lower scoring than everyone thinks. And I can play some kickers and some defenses and fade some stars and stuff like that. I don't feel great about a contrarian script in this particular game though. I don't know, Cody, what's your favorite contrarian script?
Yeah, I'm kind of with you guys that I think this is a KC spot. I think KC covers, but I think even in those situations where KC covers as a touchdown home favorite, because of the price tags on the Raiders side, you can still see these 2-4 builds work, where whether it be because of play volume or because they're firing off so many attempts late that they could force multiple Raiders into winning lineups. I kind of like the 2-4 because I think it's just got a few routes to get there. If we're wrong about the game script and they do win, of course, you would expect more Raiders to be in the winning lineup. And even if we're right and they're inefficient, they don't score very well, but they just rack up a lot of play volume in garbage time, you can still see those lineups hit there.
Yes. All right. Let's get to the planting of the flag, the flagging of the plant portion of the program. Gary, I'll give you the honors.
All right. We're getting a lot of Hunter Renfrow questions in chat. Saying, is he too cheap? 5,800 came completely off the injury report. So I'm assuming he's fully healthy. That means he's got some fresh legs. That means he's going to be a little bit of a pivot to the Davante Adams chalk, and he makes a ton of constructions. You can make an argument for a close game, blowout, however you want to go at that. He'll get his volume. He's been successful against the Chiefs recently, and we didn't talk about him too much, and I'm glad we didn't, because I'm going to flag plant him right now. I'll go Hunter Renfrow tonight.
I didn't bring him up, Gary, because I was going to flag. I was going to flag plant.
Ah, man.
That's why I was ignoring all the Hunter Renfrow comments.
I should have. You know what? I should have been more intuitive about that, honestly.
Cody, go ahead. Go ahead, Cody.
All right. Well, Charlie blew up my spot. I think it's been in my brain since I saw the $7,200 price tag on Darren Waller. A talent that, like I mentioned, we were paying $10K plus for in Showdown slates past. I don't care that Davante Adams is in town. I know there are still ceiling performances in Darren Waller's range of outcomes. 7,200. He's priced below Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Josh Jacobs, kind of in this weird range where you're going to see a lot of Juju ownership. You're going to see a lot of CEH ownership. I think Hunter Renfrow could potentially get steamed as a cheaper option too. I think Darren Waller's captain ownership is going to be really, really low in the contest that I'm playing tonight, and I think he's the optimal captain.
Okay. I'm going to go Raiders side too, and I think we're actually too high on Mac Hollins' ownership projection. I think that once everybody like settles in that Renfrow is an awesome play on this slate, and Renfro's back, and Mac Hollins didn't have a good game last week, I think we'll see less than 20% total ownership on Mac Hollins when things are said and done. And I mean, you're paying up here for a guy who's just never been able to earn targets in his career, but he's going to be out there for every snap. I think that the Raiders are going to have to take a more pass-heavy game plan in this game. I don't see how Raiders secondary can slow down Patrick Mahomes here. So I will go in a high-volume game for Derek Carr. Mac Hollins sneaks in to the optimal as like a relatively low-owned showdown piece. All right. The return of the Mac, if you call it. 4. Cody. 4. Gary. I am Adam. Go out there and win something. Win something big. Good luck, everybody.